Welcome to our deep dive. Today we're going to be looking into the life of Andrew Young.
Oh yeah, definitely a fascinating figure.
His Wikipedia page has got a lot on him.
It really does. He was involved in so much.
It seems like we'll be covering a lot of ground.
Absolutely, from civil rights all the way to international diplomacy. His life is anything but ordinary.
Yeah, for sure. But to kick things off, let's rewind back to his childhood in New Orleans. His Wikipedia mentions his father hired a professional boxer to teach him and his brother self-defense.
Oh wow, that's pretty striking.
It is, right? Like, what do you make of that kind of upbringing?
I think it really speaks to the realities of being black in America at that time. Even a well-off family like Young's, they couldn't escape the threat of violence.
Right, and you can't help but see that as like foreshadowing for the challenges he'd face later on, right?
It's absolutely confronting injustice on a much larger scale.
Exactly, and it's interesting how from learning to box, he then goes on to Howard University and gets a divinity degree.
Yeah, that's quite a shift.
It is. Do you think that signals a change in direction for him, or is it something else?
I'd say it reveals something core to his character. That unwavering faith and his belief in nonviolence. He saw the church as a platform for social change, just like Dr. King.
I see. So that's where his foundation for activism is really built.
Exactly. And we see this commitment to social justice emerging early on.
Right. But what really gets me is that even before the big civil rights campaigns, Young was putting his life on the line, encouraging black voter registration in Alabama in the 50s. That took serious courage.
Oh, absolutely. And those early experiences, I think, were crucial in shaping his approach to activism.
How so?
That he was deeply influenced by Gandhi's principles of nonviolent resistance, you see, and he saw firsthand the power of grassroots organizing.
Right. I can see how that would have a lasting impact.
And it's these early struggles that bring him into contact with Dr. King and the SCLC.
The Southern Christian Leadership Conference.
Right, and with the SCLC, Young wasn't just another marcher, he was a key strategist.
Yeah, the Wikipedia entry goes into detail about his roles in Birmingham, Selma, the March on Washington.
He was instrumental in shaping the movement's direction.
So not just participating, but actually leading in a way.
He was far more than just a figurehead.
So what was he doing behind the scenes?
Oh, a lot. He was negotiating with city officials, calming tensions within the movement, and always making sure that the message of nonviolence stayed front and center.
Wow, so a lot of diplomacy.
He had a real talent for it, and it proved essential in those turbulent times.
Absolutely, and we can't forget, this wasn't some cushy behind-the-desk kind of role. He was arrested multiple times during these protests.
Right, he put himself on the line again and again.
Which really shows his dedication to the cause.
But what often gets overlooked is Young's strategic thinking during this period.
In what way?
Well, he understood the power of media coverage.
Of course.
And he worked tirelessly to make sure that the movement's message reached a national audience.
So while Dr. King was the charismatic leader, Young was ensuring the movement resonated with the public.
Exactly, and it's this blend of activism and political savvy that paves the way for his later career in politics.
Right. First, as a congressman from Georgia, a historic win, considering the state's history.
Absolutely, and then as the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations under President Carter.
This is where things go global.
Young's appointment to the UN was groundbreaking.
In what way?
Well, he brought his unique perspective as a civil rights leader to the world stage, you see?
Oh, I see.
Advocating for human rights and peaceful resolution of conflicts.
But his time as UN ambassador wasn't without controversy, right? He got criticism for his comments on political prisoners in the U.S. and then that unauthorized meeting with the PLO, which ultimately led to his resignation.
Right.
So how do we reconcile these controversies with this image of Young as a champion of diplomacy?
That's where the deep dive gets really interesting. We have to look beyond the headlines.
And consider the context.
Exactly. Yeah. Young operated within a very specific political climate, and his actions, while controversial, often stem from this desire to push boundaries and challenge the status quo.
So maybe his approach was more nuanced than it first appeared.
It's possible he was willing to take risks, even if it meant upsetting those in power.
Which definitely ties back to his earlier activism.
It does. Young consistently demonstrated this willingness to challenge to engage with those considered adversaries, because he believed that dialogue, even with those you disagree with, is essential for progress.
And even after resigning from the UN, he didn't retreat from public life.
Not at all.
He went back to Atlanta and became the city's mayor.
And brought that same blend of activism and pragmatism to the role.
It seems like his time as mayor is a whole other chapter in itself.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It really is. His mayoralty was a testament to his belief that economic progress could be a powerful tool for social change.
Okay.
He really focused on attracting investment to Atlanta, particularly for minority and female-owned businesses.
So that seems kind of like a departure from his earlier activism, right? Focusing on economic development rather than direct confrontation. Would you say that was a shift in his ideology or more of a strategic adaptation?
I'd say more of a evolution, building upon his core values. Young always believed that economic empowerment was crucial for uplifting marginalized communities.
I see.
And as mayor, he finally had the platform to put those beliefs into practice on a large scale.
So attracting businesses, creating jobs, he saw those as ways to address systemic inequalities.
Exactly.
And his Wikipedia page mentions he brought billions of dollars in new investments to Atlanta during his time as mayor.
He did. It's a concrete achievement.
But did it actually benefit all communities? Were there any unintended consequences?
That's the crucial question, right?
Yeah.
While Young's economic policies definitely contributed to Atlanta's growth, some people argue that the benefits weren't evenly distributed.
So some were left behind.
There were concerns about gentrification and displacement of lower-income residents.
Right.
And that raises questions about the long-term impact of his development-focused approach.
So even with the best of intentions, things can get complicated.
Absolutely. It highlights the challenges of balancing economic progress with social equity, something city leaders still grapple with today.
Definitely brings us to another fascinating, albeit controversial chapter in Young's story. His involvement with Robert Mugabe in Zimbabwe.
Right.
He played a significant role in Zimbabwe's transition to majority rule, working with Mugabe, who at the time was seen as a liberator.
Right. The context is key here.
Okay.
So in the late 1970s, Zimbabwe was still Rhodesia, ruled by a white minority regime.
Right.
Young, as UN ambassador, advocated for a peaceful transition to black majority rule.
Okay.
And he saw Mugabe at that time as a key figure in that process.
But as we know, Mugabe's rule turned disastrous human rights abuses, economic collapse.
It's a difficult thing to reconcile with Young's image as a champion of human rights.
It is. Did he misjudge Mugabe, or were there other factors at play?
It's a complex question. There's no easy answers. Some say Young was naive in his assessment of Mugabe, that he overlooked warning signs. Others contend he was working with limited information and trying to navigate a very volatile political situation.
So maybe judging historical figures solely through the lens of present-day knowledge can be misleading.
I think so. We need to consider the context,
Yeah.
the information available at the time, the complexities of diplomacy.
Absolutely.
It's a reminder that history rarely offers simple narratives.
Right.
Understanding Young's involvement with Mugabe requires acknowledging the nuances of the situation, the limitations of information, and the difficult choices faced by those in positions of power.
Even figures like Young who dedicated their lives to justice and equality.
Yeah, there are moments that challenge easy categorization.
That's what makes his story so compelling.
It is, and it's through these complexities that we gain a deeper understanding of leadership, the challenges of navigating political realities, and the unintended consequences that can arise even for the most well-intentioned actions.
So even with the Mugabe chapter being controversial, it provides a valuable lesson in critical thinking, avoiding simplistic judgments, and recognizing that political landscapes are always evolving.
Right. It encourages us to delve deeper, examine the context, and grapple with the ambiguities that are inherent in any historical narrative.
Okay, now shifting back to his time as mayor. His Wikipedia highlights his efforts to bring the 1996 Summer Olympics to Atlanta.
Oh, yeah, that was a huge win for him.
It was a successful bid.
It was a significant achievement. It put Atlanta on the global stage and showcased its transformation from a symbol of segregation to a modern, diverse metropolis.
It seems like he had a knack for using large-scale events to further his vision for the city, attracting boosting its international profile.
He did.
But didn't this also come with criticisms? Weren't there concerns about the Olympics displacing residents and prioritizing spectacle over genuine community development?
You're right. Large-scale events like the Olympics often generate both excitement and controversy. While Young saw the Games as an opportunity to showcase Atlanta's progress, and potential critics voiced concerns about the displacement of lower-income residents, the environmental impact, and the allocation of public funds.
So even as he sought to elevate Atlanta's stature, he faced pushback,
He did.
reminding us that progress often comes with trade-offs and that even well-intentioned initiatives can have unintended consequences.
It underscores the complexities of urban development and the need to carefully consider the impact of large-scale projects on all segments of society.
But even after leaving public office, Young didn't just retire.
No, he didn't.
He continued to engage with issues he cared about.
He did it. He founded the Andrew Young Foundation
Oh, right.
and worked with organizations like the Global Initiative for the Advancement of Nutritional Therapy.
It seems like his post-mayoral work reflects his continued commitment to social justice, economic empowerment, and global issues.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He never stopped seeking ways to make a difference, demonstrating that leadership extends beyond holding formal positions.
And what about his later reflections on his career? Did he ever address the controversies or express regrets about certain decisions, like his support for Mugabe?
That's where things get really interesting. Young, throughout his life, maintained that dialogue, even with those we disagree with, is essential.
Okay.
He never shied away from addressing difficult questions or acknowledging the complexities of his actions.
So instead of shying away from criticism, he embraced it.
He did. He saw it as a part of the learning process.
That's a powerful message for anyone in a position of leadership.
It is. It highlights the importance of humility, self-reflection, and a willingness to engage in constructive dialogue, even when it involves uncomfortable truths.
So it seems like Young's approach to leadership was marked by this continuous process of learning and adapting.
Yeah, he wasn't afraid to admit mistakes or to, reevaluate his positions.
Right, and that willingness to engage in open dialogue, even with his critics, that's something we can all learn from.
Absolutely. It's a good reminder that true leadership involves listening to different perspectives, considering alternative viewpoints, and being open to adjusting course when necessary.
It's refreshing to see that kind of humility in a leader, especially today, where admitting fault is often seen as a weakness.
It really is. It speaks to his character. He wasn't driven by ego or a need to be right all the time. He was driven by a deep-seated commitment to justice and a belief in the power of human connection to bridge divides.
And when you look back at his career, it's incredibly diverse. Is there like a single thread that connects all those different phases, from the civil rights activism to the international diplomacy to, even leading a major city?
Well, what stands out to me is that unwavering belief in the power of dialogue
Okay.
and his ability to connect with the people from all walks of life.
Yeah.
Whether he was negotiating with segregationists in the South or diplomats at the UN or business leaders in Atlanta, Young always sought to find common ground and to build bridges of understanding.
His story also challenges us to think about leadership in a different way.
In what way?
It's not always about holding the highest office or having the loudest voice, right?
Well,
Sometimes it's about working behind the scenes, building consensus, and empowering others to create change.
and that's a powerful message.
Yeah.
Especially for young people who are looking to make a difference in the world.
Yeah.
You don't have to wait for a specific title or position to start leading.
Right.
You can start by engaging in your community, listening to different perspectives, and building relationships with those who share your values.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Andrew Young's life and legacy, what's like one key takeaway you'd want our listeners to really ponder? Something that goes beyond the facts and figures of his biography and, speaks to those broader implications of his work.
I think it would be this. How can we apply Young's approach to dialogue and bridge building to the challenges we face today, both in our own communities and on a global scale? What can we learn from his willingness to engage with those who hold different views, his commitment to finding common ground, and his unwavering belief in the power of human connection to overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles?
That's a really good question to consider, especially in a world that often feels increasingly divided.
It is.
Young's story offers this powerful reminder that even amidst conflict and disagreement, there's always room for dialogue, understanding, and ultimately progress.
His life is a testament to the enduring power of hope, the transformative potential of dialogue, and the idea that each of us can contribute to building a more just and equitable world.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the life of Andrew Young. Hopefully you gained some insights into his extraordinary journey and discovered something to reflect on, something to inspire you to make a difference in your own way. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.